Do you agree with Ms. Gaines that there's a difference between women and men?
If the question is about trans women,
I'm just asking, is there a difference between women and men?
what I can say here is that the NCAA has rules in place. They've had rules in place for the last decade, and when this competition
Okay, I'm
happened,
going to try
the
again.
rules were clear.
Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? It's a yes/no question. Do you believe there's a difference?
Do you think there are more than two sexes?
I believe that there's a definition for intersex as well that I want to acknowledge.
Why do women's sports exist? If you can't define a difference between women and men, why not abolish women's sports and just tell little girls to swim with little boys and see who wins?
So you're born, I'm talking about biology, male, female, and what else?
Why have a
we talked
separate
about it here
category for
today.
women? If there's no difference between women and men, why to have women's sports?
And how many genders are there?
I think the gender is expansive, and the definitions are always growing.
Biologically, do males have an advantage over females biologically in sports?
We're talking about trans women who are, in fact, women, who deserve to play in a gender that matches their sports, who deserve all the benefits that Ms. Gaines is talking about.
How many genders are there? Sounds like a simple question, right? But in 2025, that question is a landmine. And few weeks ago, Senator John Kennedy stepped right on it. He was questioning Kelly Robinson, and he asked her directly, how many genders are there? And here's what she said. Watch this.
This is really a question, not a suggestion. Do I understand your position to be that there are two sexes, but there can be more than two genders?
I wouldn't even say two, and we've got Dr. Lopez here as well, but there's also the definition of intersex. I think that often in these conversations we're conflating sex and gender, and I do want to affirm here that trans women are women. That is their gender.
Okay, but I'm trying to understand, do you make a distinction between sex and gender?
Yes, sir.
Okay, explain that. Do you think there are more than two sexes?
I believe that there's a definition for intersex as well that I want to acknowledge. But sex is assigned at birth.
Three? I'm just trying to understand. I'm thoroughly confused. So you're born, I'm talking about biology, male, female, and what else?
I believe that intersex is also acknowledged. But
Intersex.
again, I'm not a doctor here. What I can
And
say
what does intersex mean?
is that there's a difference between sex and gender. And I think in these conversations, we're conflating the two.
Well, but I want to start with sex, okay? There's male, there's female. When a baby's born, before the baby has had time to even have a sense of self, there's male, female, and intersex. There's a third sex.
I believe that is true, but I would defer to Dr. Lopez as I'm not a physician.
Okay. And how many genders are there?
I think the gender is expansive, and the definitions are always growing.
Her answer? Not 2, not 5, not even close. She said gender is expansive, that it's evolving, that it could be infinite. Let that sink in. Infinite, like the stars. Now look, be who you want to be, wear what you want, love who you love. But if we're making laws, building policies, deciding who plays in what league, we need to agree on something real, something stable. Because if gender has no limits, how do we legislate it? How do we protect it? And that is exactly what Kennedy is saying here. Watch this clip, and I'll be right back.
Today I can tell you, I
More
talk
than
to young
five?
people
More
that
than-
talk about non-binary as...
More than 5?
I think the gender is not a binary, is what I'm trying
But
to say.
are there more than 5 genders? I'm just trying to understand. Are there more than 5 genders?
Well, I think that there was a time where women wearing pants didn't feel like it was appropriate for their gender, and yet I'm wearing pants today. I think that there are ways that we express our gender that are expansive.
Are there more than 5?
I wouldn't subject myself to naming how many genders there are, but what I can say is
there
that
an
gender is a
infinite
reflection.
number?
Excuse me?
There's an infinite number of genders?
I think depending on your culture, there are a lot of different genders that exist. And I can also say that it's a term that's evolving. If you look at young people today, they really don't lean into the binary of only woman and man. So I think that it's incumbent upon us not to legislate on this, but create space for them to explore what their identities are, what their gender identities are.
Let's get back to athletics. I think I understand what you're saying. There are three sexes: male, female, and intersex.
I believe that to be true, but again, I'm not a physician.
And
so
there are an infinite number of genders because gender is a mental state.
Gender is about expression, and I think that there are a variety of ways that you can express your gender.
You can't build rules around something that constantly shifts. Senator Kennedy tried to break it down. He asked about sex, not gender, but biology. Are there more than two sexes? Robinson said, male, female, and intersex. Okay, that's in the science books. But when it came to gender, she gave nothing clear. No number, no lines. Just talk of culture and identity. And again, I get it. Identity is personal, but reality still matters. Then came the real heat. Sports. Kennedy asked, do biological males have a physical advantage over biological females? And still, no straight answer. We all know the truth here. It's not controversial. It's middle school gym class. Biological males, on average, are faster, stronger, taller. That's not hate. That's just facts.
Do you agree with Ms. Gaines that there's a difference between women and men?
If the question is about trans women,
I'm just asking, is there a difference between women and men?
what I can say here is that the NCAA has rules in place. They've had rules in place for the last decade, and when this competition
Okay, I'm
happened,
going to try
the
again.
rules were clear.
Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? It's a yes/no question. Do you believe there's a difference?
Oh, I think that we're talking about this case with the NCAA.
No, I'm asking a question. Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? Most people could answer this very simply. I'm curious if you're willing to do so.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just putting it into the context of the
Is that a yes?
conversation that we're having. I think that there are definitions related to sex.
Is
but
that
I
a
also
yes?
think
So I'm
that when
trying to
we're-
get a yes or no. I'm not trying to get a speech.
I'm
Is there a difference between women and men?
I think that there are definitions for biological sex.
Okay, so you're
which
not
is
answering
different
that.
than
Let me ask
gender.
you this question then. Why do women's sports exist? If you can't define a difference between women and men, why not abolish women's sports and just tell little girls to swim with little boys and see who wins?
Oh, I'm simply saying that that sex
My
is different
question,
than gender.
why
and I do
do-
believe
why
that
do
women's
women's
sports
sports
have a great
exist?
value. I mean, Senator, I'll tell you right
Ms.
now.
Robinson, please answer the question I'm asking you.
Absolutely.
Why do women's sports exist?
I think that there are so many positive benefits to sports.
But
I mean,
why have a
we've talked
separate
about it here
category for
today.
women? If there's no difference between women and men, why to have women's sports?
I'm saying that there's a difference between sex and gender, and that the NCAA has rules in place, which they have for the last decade.
Mr. Chairman,
which
I
determine
would
that
like to enter into
related
the
to
record an
participation.
article from Duke Law called Comparing Athletic Performances for the Best Elite Women to Boys and Men. And it goes through examining in 2017 the top records for women in the world in various track and field events. So, for example, in the 100 meter, the top record for women in the world was 10.71 seconds. Now, that record for the number one woman in the world in 2017 was, in the year 2017, broke.
Kennedy even brought up Serena and Venus Williams, legends, but both lost to the 203rd-ranked male tennis player. Robinson tried to counter with her own story. Said her husband was stronger. Watch this clip, and I'll be right back.
My experience, my husband, he swam at University of Kentucky as well. In terms of accolades and in terms of national ranking, I was a much better swimmer than him. He could kick my butt any day of the week without trying.
Okay. Biologically, do males have an advantage over females biologically in sports?
Again, I'm not a physician, and I can't speak to that.
What's your real world experience?
It depends. I mean, there are some people who are born male that I'm faster than if I were to sprint against them, and some that I'm not. Some males that are taller than some women, and some that are
You
shorter.
don't believe that a biological male has a physical advantage in sports over a biological female?
Not as a definitive statement.
Give me an example. Well, no, I don't think.
This isn't about personal anecdotes. It's about fairness. It's about fact. Because if we say biology doesn't matter, if we tell kids gender is whatever you say it is today, what are we teaching them? That truth is flexible, that feelings outweigh science, and who gets hurt? Not the politicians. Robinson ended by saying, "My womanhood is not threatened by a transgender person asserting hers." That sounds powerful, but it misses the point. This isn't about being threatened. It's about being erased. It's about rules, fairness, and reality. Because once we stop agreeing on the basics, what's left? So let's circle back. How many genders are there? If the answer is infinite, then ask yourself, can any society survive if nothing means anything anymore?
I think, unfortunately, today's Democrat Party has decided that women's sports and girls' sports no longer matters, and they're willing to push radical legislation designed to destroy girls' sports and women's sports.
I just think, Ms. Robinson, I'm trying to understand where you're coming from. I think you lose a lot of credibility when you don't concede that a biological male has physical advantages over a biological female. I mean, I just think that's a proven fact, and you really hurt your credibility.
If I need to check the science before deciding who wins in a foot race, we've lost the plot. And Kennedy didn't let it slide. He brought receipts. Serena and Venus Williams, two of the greatest female athletes of all time, both got beat by the 203rd ranked male tennis player. That's not sexist. That's scoreboard. Robinson fired back with her personal story, said her husband was stronger, even though she had more accolades in swimming. I mean, sweet story, but the argument is literally, even though I had the medals, he still crushed me. Which kinda proves the senator's point. Here's the deal. Nobody's saying trans people don't deserve respect. Nobody's saying you shouldn't live your truth. But when your truth starts rewriting reality, now we've got a problem. We can't just keep shifting definitions because someone, somewhere, might get offended. We're not erasing people. We're trying to protect fairness. A teenage girl who trained for years shouldn't lose a title to a biological male, because politicians are afraid to say what everyone's thinking. We're building policy on feelings, folks. That's like building a house on a cloud. Robinson closed by saying, "My womanhood is not threatened by a trans woman," and maybe that's true for her. But for the girls losing scholarships, the women being pushed out of spaces built for them, it's not about being threatened. It's about being replaced. So, how many genders are there? If your answer is infinite, then answer this. Can a society function when definitions don't? Because if everything is fluid, then maybe we're all just drowning.